Okay, please, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can hear you loud and clear.
All right, so let's look at the objective or the object of the Public Procurement Authority. In fact, they were set up to harmonize the public procurement in the public service. To listen to here very well, to secure a judicious, economical, and efficient use of state resources, and to ensure that public procurement is carried out in a fair, transparent, and non-discriminatory manner. In fact, pay attention to the objective of the Public Procurement Authority. You realize that the things you see there are part of the things that are in the what? Principles of procurement. If you are very observant, the examiner can ask you in an exam that public procurement, blah, 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 etc. What is the objective of the Public Procurement Authority? To harmonize the public procurement in the public service, to secure a judicious, economical, and efficient use of state resources, and to ensure that public procurement is carried out in a fair, transparent, and non-discriminatory manner. If you check these things, they are the things we see at the principles of procurement. You see that? Transparent, economy, competition. These are the things you see in the right. So these are the reason why the Public Procurement Authority was set up. If you remember, I mentioned when you are studying about some of these state agencies, the things you should know or take notice of is the governing body, their function, then their objectives. The examiner can ask you, know the objective, because once you hear Public Procurement Authority, it means that this was set up by what? A parliamentary statute. And by all means, they will have their objectives, their functions, their powers, limitation, what they cannot do, the governing board. Okay, so let's look at the governing board of Public Procurement Authority. Governing board of Public Procurement Authority. In fact, they can ask you this one. Now, the Public Procurement Authority shall have a governing board of 9 persons. So how many? 9 persons.
9 persons.
Yes, a governing board of 9 persons appointed by who? As usual.
The president.
The president, yes. Appointed by the president. Appointed by the president. Under Article 70 of the Constitution. The examiner can ask you something simple like this. So, here, these 9 persons is made up of what? We have to know. So, the board comprised of the following. 1, a chairperson. who is competent and experienced in public procurement. In fact, all the things I'm going to name, all of them will end with who is competent and experienced in procurement. So bear with me. I may not add that one for the subsequent one, but for example, a chairperson. A chairperson. Then the chairperson who is what? Competent and experienced
In procurement.
and experienced in what? Public procurement.
Procurement.
It's going to be the same for, so we are going to look at 9 people. We've got what? 1. A chairperson is 1. Let it 8 more, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Then 4 persons. The next one is 4 persons from the public sector. From the public sector, made up of 1 representative from Attorney General, Godfrey Dami, and 3 persons from Minister of Finance, nominated by Minister of what? Finance. 3 persons nominated by Minister of Finance, of whom 1 shall be a woman. Of whom 1 shall be a woman. So how many persons do we have here out of the 9?
We have
5.
3.
Yes, we have 5. A chairperson is 1. The next one, 4 persons. So we have 5. Anthony, you get it now? Yes, so
Yes,
let it 4 more. The next one is 3 persons. 3 persons from the private sector. 3 persons from the private sector with experience in what? Procurement. With experience in procurement. 1 of whom shall be a woman. Shall be a woman. So now how many persons do we have? 8, isn't it?
Yes, 8.
Yes, we are left with 1. The next one we have to be with Chief Executive Officer. So CEO of the Public Procurement Authority. So these are the 9 persons who made up the governing board of the Public Procurement Authority. Just like any constitutional or state body, when we have their objective, a governing board, they will have functions. Let's look at the functions of Public Procurement Authority. Functions of public. Please take note. Some of these things, not some. In fact, they ask them in the exams, so we have to take note. So PPA, for short, as many people call it. What are their functions? The first one is that they are set up to make proposals for formulation. They are set up to make proposals for formulation of public procurement policies. That's their first function. They are also set up to draft rules, instructions, and other regulatory documents on what? Public procurement. Now, when I mentioned to draft rules, instructions, and other regulatory documents on public procurement, you remember when we were doing Minister of Finance, where the Minister of Finance prepared what? Budget circular or budget what? Budget circulars or what? Who remembers? When we were doing the role of Ministry of Finance in national budgeting, they develop budget circulars or instructions. Do you remember? Budget circulars or instructions. Then they will disseminate all this to various public sector institutions for them to follow the instruction in preparing their budget. The same thing, Public Procurement Authority draft rules, instruction on procurement. They are also set up to establish and implement public procurement information systems. Yes. Now, when you go to their website, in fact, just like this is like an IT system. On their website, they have a list of all suppliers and what they supply. In fact, for you to be able to even procure with them, you need to be what? Registered by way of like a license. And this license is also renewed. Wow. So there should be like an information system on all their activities, ranging from the time procurement process will start to award of contracts, execution, and other administrative processes. There should be an information system, and they are set up to do that. They are also to facilitate and train professional development of public procurement officers. Yes. So I told you that every public sector entity has a procurement unit. It is a function of PPA to train all those who are in the procurement offices of such units. Then they are also set up to publish a public procurement bulletin. To what? Publish a public procurement bulletin. Yes. This, I said, if you go to their website, some of these things, they are there. They publish bulletins, journals about current trends and development information, report, and other things. If you go to their website, all these things are there. So these are some of the functions of the public procurement. Okay. Let's move on. Any question? Now, let's look at use of established commercial practice. Please, a minute. All right, sorry. So let's continue. Now, a procurement entity may undertake procurement in accordance with established commercial practices. When we say a procurement entity, think of any public sector office Yes, it's a procurement what? Entity. And we are saying that a procurement entity may undertake procurement in accordance with what? Established commercial practices if the entity is legally and financially autonomous and operates under a commercial law. If the entity is legally and financially autonomous and operates under commercial law.
No.
Yes. 2, if it is beyond contention that public procurement practices are not suitable given the strategic nature of public procurement. In fact, let me explain the first one. The entity is legally and financially autonomous and operates under commercial law. What I meant here is by what? The GBEs. The government business enterprises. Those people who are autonomous, like GCB. Are you getting me?
ADB.
Say again.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
ADB.
we call them GBEs. GBEs, meaning government business enterprises or entities. Yes, these people are autonomous bodies. They do their procurement their own way without recourse to what? The public procurement authority. But then internally, they also have their established way of what? Procurement. Okay. Then the second one was, if the entity is beyond contention, the public procurement practices are not suitable given the strategic nature of the procurement. This is what I mentioned, that it is not, see, use of established commercial practice. The moment you hear commercial practice, what will come to your mind? Private enterprise. MTN, Vodafone, Unilever, DSTV, Samsung. I mean, name all the private. So the moment you hear commercial practice, meaning that private sector what? Practice. So under which condition would there be use of what? Established commercial practice? That's what this topic or what I'm discussing mean. Anthony, is that okay now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Then let me mention the second one again. It is beyond contention that public procurement practices are not suitable given strategic nature of procurement. Yes, I told you that sometimes it is not all the procurement that will go through the normal procurement process because of the nature. For example, if they are going to procure ammunitions, certain things that are sensitive in the public domain, maybe because of security issues. In that case, they might go by what? Commercial practice or not in line with the PPA regulation. Then the third one is the proposed procurement method will ensure value for money, provide competition and transparency to the extent possible. Yes, you can only resort to commercial practice if there is the assurance that that particular proposed procurement method will ensure value for money. Those of you who have watched my video on PEFA, you realize that it began with what? Value for money. Accountability and value for money in the PEFA framework. Please go and watch that video. But when we meet in class, we are only going to solve calculations on PEFA. And if you have any questions in class, you come, you ask, we will address them. So these are the 3 instances whereby we use what? Established commercial practice in procurement. All right. Having said this, let's move on to the next one that I like so much. Procurement structures. The examiner like asking some questions from here. Procurement structures. Procurement structures. Yes, it's a very nice subtopic. Now, these procurement structures are built in the Procurement Act, and they include 1. These are the procurement structures. We'll come and look at them one by one. Tender Review Board. 2, procurement entity. I believe some of you have done this somewhere before. I'm very much aware. Procurement entity, tender committee, and the last one is tender evaluation panel. Yes, these are the 4 procurement structures. We are going to look at them one after the other. So let's look at tender review board. Now, the tender review board are established at 4 levels based on established threshold. They are what? Established at 4 levels based on authorized threshold. What are these 4 levels? These 4 levels are: 1, central tender review board; 2, ministerial or headquarters tender review board; regional tender review board; and the last one is district tender review board. Yes. So you see, at the apex level or the highest level, that's where we have what? Central tender review board. Then ministerial. When you talk of ministerial, you think of any ministry: Ministry of Roads and Highway, Ministry of Roads and Transport, Ministry of Trade and Industry, Ministry of Finance. There is a tender review board at that level. Then we have regional, Greater Accra. Then district, La Dadekotopon Municipal Assembly. That's a district. So these are the levels. Now, so this tender review board people, what do they do? What do they do? This tender review board people, what do they do? Let's look at the functions of tender review board. What do they do? Functions of tender review board. 1, they review the activities carried out in a particular procurement at each step. They review activities of each step of procurement. Yes. At each step of the procurement cycle to ensure compliance with the laws, acts, the laws or the acts, instructions, and guidelines. So when you hear guidelines, looking at it from a different way, the budget guidelines or circulars will come into your mind. And from the Ministry of Finance, those people, that's what they also do. Please pay attention. They do ask questions on these things, but I mean, what are the procurement structures, their functions. In fact, they can even ask you to explain to a group of national service people what it means of procurement structures and the functions of each structure. So pay very much particular attention over here for me. So these people, you see, like I mentioned, every district every region, every ministry, and central government have this tender review board. And these are the things they are mandated to do or perform as a function. Then they also give concurrent approval or otherwise. So they'll either approve or what, not approve, or otherwise, to enable procurement entities to continue with the procurement processes. Yes. So you see, you can't carry out, in fact, you can't go and buy anything from a private sector. Let's say laptops, furniture, fridges, TVs. You can't go and buy or contract anybody to come and do any work without whatever you have done being sent to the tender review board. If they don't give you the approval, it means that thing cannot be what? That procurement will not go on. That's what they do. Okay. Next is that they review decisions of heads of entities in respect of complaint. Now, in procurement, if let's say Kimbu headmaster or the Kimbu school, they carry out a procurement and you as a supplier or a bidder, you realize that you were not treated fairly. You can write to Kimbu, their procurement department, that you were not treated well about how the procurement process went and why you were not given the contract. If these people don't handle your complaint very well, it will travel to the tender review board. For example, they gave you a decision why they didn't select you, and you felt that they didn't act right, and so you forwarded everything to the tender review board. Then they'll review the decision of that headmaster or that head of procurement unit there. So more or less like you'll be given a hearing there. Now, the next function is that they furnish the Public Procurement Authority with what? Relevant reports. Relevant report. Yes. Just like when we're doing under the Public Financial Management Act. I mean, internal audit agency and all those, they furnish the minister and then controller with what? Quarterly and annual report. These people, they also furnish the authority with reports. Okay. So these are the functions of the tender review board. Let's go and look at the second one. This one, procurement entity. Procurement entity. When we say procurement entity, what does it mean? Procurement entity. A procurement entity is any entity that is responsible for public procurement. So any entity that is what? Responsible for public procurement under the law. Yes. So Kimbu, SHS, La Dadekotopon, Controller and Accountant General, Ghana Education Service, Ghana Police Service, Labadi, Ghana Prison Service, Cantonment. All these institutions are what? Procurement entities. That's how I can say that a procurement entity is any entity that is responsible for public procurement under the law or under the Public Procurement Act. Now, the head of the entity is responsible and accountable for actions taken in the procurement process. So when we take Ghana Education Service, who is the head Ghana Education Service, the one at the stadium there, or even GES, Nungwa, Ghana Education Service, Nungwa, who is the head of Ghana Education Service, Nungwa. In fact, he is the head. So they're saying the head of the entity is responsible and accountable for actions taken in the procurement process, because no procurement can be taken without his notice. The same for Kimbu headmaster. Okay. Having a look at procurement entity, let's look at what we mean by a procurement unit. A procurement. What is a procurement unit? It's a section in a procurement entity. A section in a procurement entity with the responsibility of undertaking managing, and coordinating all the procurement activities within the entity. So it means that a procurement unit is a subset within a procurement what? Entity. If you agree with me. So let's say if you go to Kimbu, Kimbu is a procurement entity. Within Kimbu, if administration, we have administration, or let's say teaching staff, non-teaching staff. Within Kimbu itself, or let's say, any sector entity, we have administrative, HR and administration, finance, logistics, audit, IT. If any of these units need an item to be bought or acquired, then that particular public sector entity is a procurement entity. But the various departments within the procurement entity are what we call procurement what? Units. Please, is it clear? We can therefore say that a procurement unit is a subset of what? A procurement entity. So you may have La Dadekotopon Municipal Assembly as a procurement entity. And the La Dadekotopon Municipal Assembly, when you go, there are sub department or division that also what? Carries out procurement activities. And that will be by procurement unit. The examiner can ask you to differentiate between a procurement entity and a procurement unit. What are the functions of a procurement unit? What are the functions of a procurement unit? What are the functions? They ensure that funds are properly what? Committed. Ensure that funds are properly committed. Please, when I mention committed, what do I mean? Don't forget, we've done commitment or encumbrance. That commitment or encumbrance is when an expenditure is recognized based on a decision. For example, a contract or a purchase order. Okay. They ensure that funds are properly what? Committed before executing procurement. Before executing procurement process. Procurement process. Or a purchase order through contracts. This was the definition I used when I was defining encumbrance or commitment accounting. They also arrange publication of what? Advertisements. Arrange publication of advertisement or adverts and notices of contract award. And notices of what? Contract award. So these people, they are responsible in ensuring that there are enough notices for people to come and bid for a contract. And when one person is selected or a bidder wins, then they will notify the person that you are the one who won the contract, and so go ahead and administer or execute the contract. That is what they do. Okay. Thirdly, they also maintain and update the database of suppliers, contractors, and other service providers. Yes, so they have to maintain a database of all the people they buy from or supply items to them. Please, as usual, the meeting ends again in less than a minute. And when it does end, we have to rejoin. We have to rejoin. Lizzie, you have something to say? Okay. So see you, please. In the next section, I want you to ask questions. Ask questions. Ask questions. All right. Are you enjoying the lecture?
Yes, sir.